Okay. Um, Sentinel. Okay. Okay. All right, I'm ready to go with it. Are we good? Like that? Okay.
Yeah, I'm all set. Yeah, sorry. I'm just reading the script here.
The Miami Dolphins delivered one of the most impressive performances in Brian Flores' 2 year career last Sunday, beating last year's NFC champions, the San Francisco 49ers, 43 to 14. The Dolphins controlled the game from start to finish and pretty much had their way in each phase of the game, complementing one another. It was the most complete win of Brian Flores' 21 game tenure and provided plenty of evidence that this rebuilding franchise is headed in the right direction. But can the Dolphins keep the wins coming, Dave?
Wow, they play the Jets this weekend, Omar. Come on. I mean, this is the easiest game of the year, I think. When you look at what's going on with the Jets, 0-5, last in points scored, second to last in points given up. Adam Gaze's head looks like it's about to topple in New York anytime. They just cut Le'Veon Bell. So can they continue it? Yes, yes, absolutely. And they should. This should be a blowout win. And we're here a week from now saying, "Oh my God, this is the greatest team ever." So yeah, they'll continue the winning this week.
I've always had these Jets games circled on the schedule because they were the most important games to me, to show evidence that this franchise was sort of turning around. You looked at these two games, they were probably clearly going to be the only two games on the schedule that Miami was favored to win, and it's very critically important. But what I got to say about the 49ers game is they complemented each other so well. One, you know how I feel about this defense. I'm not a huge fan of it because it primarily looks well against when it has the lead, does not necessarily look great when it's trailing. But the way that they started fast and Ryan Fitzpatrick sort of, produced points, was efficient in the red zone, and more importantly, delivered the big plays. This was the first game that we finally got to see some big plays. Preston Parker actually showed up after having a strong training camp and a slow start to the early portion of the season. And this team played like they had the potential to. I didn't feel comfortable with what I saw from the running game or the run defense, but those are still areas that this team can definitely improve on. Let's get to our first question, which comes from Danny Leon. What does this performance this past week do for your expectations the rest of the way, Dave Hyde?
Um, I'm not going to be Debbie Downer here, Omar. My prediction 7-9 on the year, and I'm not coming off that. It was a great win. Great win. I don't think we really measured how bad San Francisco is, though. I mean, they had a great game plan going into this. The Dolphins had a great game plan, attack the cornerbacks. None of them are any good. They just picked, Brian Allen was benched at halftime. These are replacement players, and Jamar Taylor's thrown in there. They just picked him off the street. They have no pass rush like they did before. Their defensive line is gone this year. Okay, so I'm not discounting what the Dolphins did, so settle down. But, I think I did. I thought San Francisco was better than they were, and I was surprised, and I didn't do my homework on on the secondary of the 49ers. I knew the defensive line was bad. I knew they had problems on offense, but the Dolphins really very smartly took advantage of matchup problems.
Yeah, I mean, and that was one of the strengths of Brian Flores when he became the Dolphins head coach. He's coming from an organization that caters their game plan to their opponent, as every team does, but they attack the weaknesses. What I was encouraged by was the fact that Ryan Fitzpatrick was throwing big and throwing deep. I had questioned openly his arm strength and whether or not that was going to be an element of this season. I've seen it in training camp in past years, saw it in training camp this year, but hadn't seen it in the first 4 games, and was pleasantly surprised that that was still there. If they can continue to deliver big plays and keep keep the game plan honest, keep defenses from crowding the box, I think that they can have a successful offense.
Can they get Brian Allen to play cornerback against them the rest of the year, just for the first half, like he did Sunday? Do that. Just everybody will be happy. Okay.
Hey, at this point in the season, everybody's battling some injuries, so it's not hard to pick on the weak link. Oscar has our next question. Will we be investing in a proper running back? When will we be investing in a proper running back?
I would guess the offseason. Okay. Now, obviously, Le'Veon Bell is out there, and if Le'Veon
out there on
Bell,
the street, Dave, you claiming him or you're not claiming him?
I'm not claiming him. I'm not bringing in a question into like that into my locker room at this point.
Are you making an offer though? So you're not making an offer at all?
I am not. And I get why they might. I get why there's a possibility. When he's at his prime, he's not only a make a difference running back, but he would fit this offense and this offensive line of road graders.
Yeah.
So I get why there's a hope that he does. But he hasn't played like that. We're talking what 1.5, 2 years at this point.
All right,
that's forever in an NFL career.
Let me make this argument and sales pitch to you about why Le'Veon Bell, let's say at $4 million a season, makes some sense for the Dolphins. One, you're already paying for Jordan Howard that amount of money, and it hasn't turned out how you would want. Now, Le'Veon Bell is the power running back, but also he runs with patience and visions. And what this offensive line hasn't been able to do is they have not been able to create running lanes, and at least immediate running lanes. My thought is if they can be a power driving offensive line and Le'Veon Bell is back there in the backfield and runs with his patient process like he does, you can probably get a very sustainable running game. And right now, I would argue to you with Myles Gaskin and Matt Breida, they don't have a sustainable running game. And, yes, they've had to run and they've managed to make it through 2 games that led to victories at the end of the game. But I don't have confidence that they can run when they need to run.
Omar, if they were going to do that, if they were going to make a play for Le'Veon Bell for $3-4 million, they could have signed Devontae Freeman for $3 million. That would have been the play. I could understand that play and that gamble. On a rebuilding team, I'm not sure I want to bring in a guy who's shown if things go south, he's not going to be there for you. So I'm not sure he's a good fit for what.
You're not on the Le'Veon train.
I'm not on the Le'Veon train. I guess you are though, right? I mean,
I think it makes sense. We have to get whoever is at quarterback here a running game, and I'm not sure that that's here. And I'm not sure that a long-term answer is here. Not that Le'Veon Bell can be a long-term answer, but let's not pretend like 2 years ago he wasn't a top 5 player in this league.
Oh, absolutely. He was a great player. So, but again, that's a long time in the NFL. Okay, Lenny asks, how did Robert Hunt look in his first full performance, and what do you want to see from him moving forward?
Yeah, Robert did well. Power blocks. He pulled well. Good, solid showing. But then let's not pretend like he was up against some forceful pass rushers. We have not really seen this offensive line be truly challenged by an elite pass rusher. And I'm talking the entire offensive line. I don't think they've faced an elite pass rusher yet this season. Now, that's come. They faced some good lines, but they haven't faced an elite pass rusher. That's coming, and that will bring our true test and evaluation for Robert Hunt. But I did like the way Solomon Kinley and Robert Hunt, they played as a tandem, and that was encouraging to see because they should be the right side tandem for this line in the future, and I'm excited about the possibilities.
And he played against Eric Armstead a lot of the time, right? I mean,
he's very good. He's very good. I thought
not a pass rusher, I'd agree, but he's a big body, and that was as good as the 49ers defensive line could offer on Sunday. and
They've lost their top 3 defensive ends.
yeah, and they lost a great defensive lineman to Indianapolis in free agency. They've lost, they're not what they were anything close when they were here in the Super Bowl. So it's but Robert Hunt looked for his first start. I was surprised that there was never really a time where you said, "Oh my God, there's a rookie looking like a rookie." So that's a good start. All right, JP Ducey wants to know, was Sunday's game against the 49ers Brian Flores' best coaching job yet?
I would argue against that. I would say the New England game where the Patriots were playing for everything. That game, that loss, in my opinion, prevented the Patriots from playing in the Super Bowl. So I would argue to you that going up there on the road, that was their biggest victory. But, no disrespect to the 49ers, but Jimmy Garoppolo didn't look like himself. They had issues at cornerback. They had some depletions at defensive end. So this was a game where it was ripe for the picking. But let's not pretend like the Dolphins weren't 9-point underdogs.
Yeah, I mean, virtually everybody picked San Francisco, so that says something. I think, I didn't do my homework enough on San Francisco. I'll say that. When I saw their secondary, I thought that is not an NFL secondary back there, and the Dolphins took great advantage of it. That's smart coaching. Give Brian Flores credit. They went in there and then you had a somewhat immobile Jimmy Garoppolo who he didn't look like who he's looked like either. And so, but the Dolphins, hey, you go in there, you win like they did on the road against some pedigree of a team. That's a nice job. Probably me. I thought, if not New England, you can go back to some of their games.
Eagles
when they had the Eagles game when they had such a bad start last year, and Flores held it together, and the team held it together. To me, those were more telling of what Brian Flores can do under severe pressure.
So this season, the Dolphins have battled a couple of injuries. They've been relatively healthy, but Davin Godchaux, the starting defensive tackle for the past 4 seasons, has suffered a bicep injury. It's a bicep tear. There's a possibility, remote, that he could return this season. Doesn't make much sense to me from the standpoint he's entering into free agency. He plays on the defensive line. It's a lot of hand-to-hand combat. If I'm an offensive lineman, first thing I'm doing is chopping at that bicep. So I think he's going to be shut down for the season. We'll see later on this week. But Dave, how much do you think that this is going to impact the defensive line, and who do you think needs to step up?
Well, we've talked about it here. Especially the interior of the defensive line wasn't great to begin with. Okay, when you come into power running games, they've looked suspect, and that's where I would attack the Dolphins even before the Godchaux injury. Now you throw an injury here, and all the normal people, I guess, have to step forward. Omar, Raekwon Davis, we can throw him in there. Zach Seiler, who Christian Wilkins, obviously, because
you put more on Christian Wilkins.
There isn't anybody sitting out there in free agency who's 320 pounds run stuffer waiting to help you out.
There are a couple of free agents. I still think there's opportunities out there in free agency, but most of those guys are stopgap players. The young players really have to step up. This is Raekwon Davis. He is the most physically imposing defensive lineman I've seen in a Dolphins uniform probably ever, in terms of since I've covered this team in 14 years. 6'7", 330 pounds. He looks the part. He's just got to play like he's motivated. I think he can give you 25 good snaps, and I'm a big fan of Zach Seiler. I think that he's probably been the most impressive defensive player except for Xavier Howard, for the last 3 weeks, and I'm intrigued to see what he can do in an elevated role. The question is, will Shaq Lawson come back from a shoulder injury? And if Shaq Lawson does come back from a shoulder injury, can Seiler move inside to that defensive tackle spot and play basically a technique that requires him to take on 2 blockers? But let's begin this episode with let's play a new game of over-under where we discuss the newcomers that have been added in free agency, not the draft, but free agency, and see who has exceeded expectations and who has fallen short. Byron Jones, Dave Hyde, 5 tackles in 2 games. He's coming back from that Achilles growing injury. How do you think he's performed?
Well, he's an incomplete grade. I mean, to me, you get hurt in the first game. Now you saw, if you're going for the upside here, you saw what his impact on the defense can mean, in that he's getting people, not only him back, but other players to play positions are much more comfortable with, and this defense sort of to settle into a nice everybody in their role when he came back against San Francisco. But to me, it's an incomplete grade. You need to see more. You need to see, and you won't see it this week either from Byron Jones when, the Jets are, they're awful. And so, when he was out, they really needed him. Russell Wilson, Cam Newton in the opener, obviously. A hot Josh Allen. So that would have been a great, measuring stick to where we are with Byron Jones and the defense as a whole. But there's no criticism for what he did in the San Francisco game when you look at what the whole defense did.
Now, Kyle Van Noy, 19 tackles, 2 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 1 fumble recovery in the past 5 games. Has he matched, exceeded, or fell short of your expectations?
Well, what I would have said, until I started looking at the stats was, boy, you want to see some more big plays out of him because
$15 million a year. $15 million this year.
Okay, 2 forced fumbles in 5 games now. That's pretty nice. 2 sacks. I don't think you could really expect more out of, he had 6.5 sacks with the Patriots.
He's had 5 impact plays in 5 games.
Yeah, so I'm fine with that. I don't think you can really expect more impact plays out of Kyle Van Noy than that. What's your thoughts, Omar?
I think he's matched. I would like to see him vary his role a little bit more. I'd like to see him be more of a pressure player. I knew what you got when you signed up for him. He's a Swiss Army knife. He can do everything at a relatively high level, exceptional at not necessarily anything, but he's a guy that can make this defense go. I would love to see them tighten the screws a little bit on run defense. Love to see him make more tackles at the line of scrimmage or behind the line of scrimmage. But it's been okay so far. Price tag's a little high for me, but it's been okay.
All right, the defensive ends. You have Shaq Lawson and Emmanuel Ogbah.
Shaq Lawson, 9 tackles, 1 sack. He's trying to work his way back from that shoulder injury. Emmanuel Ogbah, 14 tackles, 3 sacks, 1 forced fumble. That's a guy who has sort of exceeded expectations for me. I'm quite encouraged by what I've seen from him, but I still would make this argument to you. Right now, Andrew Van Ginkel might be the best pass rusher on this team, and that completely blows my mind. I just don't see any pass rushing specialists on this team, and that's an issue for me.
Well, 3 sacks in 5 games. Did you expect Emmanuel Ogbah to deliver more than that? You look at that. That's 10 sacks in a year. That's a nice.
That's a nice little haul.
Yeah, that's a nice fill in that box.
The problem that I have is most of those sacks are coming in garbage time, and you got to give me more when the game is on the line.
He's shown more the last 2-3 games, I think, than he did the first couple games. So I think when we talk about a lot of guys and a lot of teams are going to have a slow start because of the oddity of the year. Maybe that's the case with him. Okay, Eric Flowers and Ted Karras in the middle of the offensive line, Omar.
I think the offensive line has done adequate. I would say that they are one of the top performing units on this team. I'm not arguing that. And for the fact that you now have to start 3 rookies, it's good. Is it good enough? I would argue to you that it's not. And Ryan Fitzpatrick has saved this team from probably 10 sacks this season in terms of his ability to evade pressure, scrambling out of the pocket, his quick throws. I would love to see Ryan Fitzpatrick have more time to work, and I'd also love to see this offensive line create some running lanes. I don't think it's all on the backs that this team has a very inept rushing attack. I know they're averaging over 100 yards a game, but Are they really? Because Fitzpatrick is really the second leading rusher on this team.
Yeah, they showed something in the San Francisco game, and again, you're going to have to see it sustain a little because of the nature of that game and again the 49ers defensive line. But when they needed to run out some clock, they ran out some clock. That's what you're hoping, and part of that's on the offensive line. I agree with you that the Dolphins' rushing attack isn't anything great, but maybe that was a sign of maybe something's coming together. I don't think they ever went into the season thinking Myles Gaskin was going to be their top back, but he's proved that he is, and whether he's a impactful NFL back, I don't know. We'll have to see more from him. But the line's been a surprise, I think, to most people this year. When you're starting that young a line, it hasn't played it all together, and it hasn't been, it hasn't been a deficiency. It's been okay.
Our bar is based on what we saw last year, which was the worst line in franchise history. Just because it's not the worst line in franchise history does not necessarily mean that it's performing well.
Well, not even that, Omar. I think they had so many questions of, first of all, rookies. How quickly will they get up to speed without having a preseason and an off season?
Yeah.
And then the same with the veterans all meshing together. And the first month of the season, they weren't losing games for you. They weren't the reason you were losing games. They weren't winning games, but I would have thought the first month that could have been a real problem, and it wasn't for the. So I'll Flowers and Karras, I would give credit for that. How about let's go to the running backs now? Jordan Howard and Matt Breida.
I think Jordan Howard has clearly been a disappointment. Yes, he leads the team with 3 rushing touchdowns, but 14 yards on 18 carries, that's not good enough. Matt Breida is a guy that I'm surprised that we haven't seen more from. I mean, he's got 100 rushing yards on 27 carries, 27 yards in receiving on 5 receptions, but it's just not good enough. And this isn't anything on Myles Gaskin, because I think he's a good Burnley, Parmalee type back. But you need more. You need more from this rushing attack. And now if they're going to be a run and shoot or spread offense, draw play, running team, that's okay. There's no shame in that. But I would like to see you be able to run effectively out the I formation. I'd like to see you run effectively with a fullback in the backfield. I'd like to see you run effectively with 2 tight ends on the line. Like, Brian Flores, and I say this with the greatest amount of respect, because I truly do want a team that could be a power rushing team. I watched the Tennessee Titans last night, and God bless Ryan Tannehill, because he's certainly shutting up a lot of his critics, including myself. But I mean, when they snap the ball, that offensive line is 4 yards down the field, pass or block. They are a forceful unit, and Derrick Henry is he literally runs forward and falls, and he's gained 4 yards. Like, give me that kind of line, and give me that kind of back.
Oh, yeah, and it is very bizarre. And I think good for most Dolphins fans, I find, are rooting for Ryan Tannehill.
I'm rooting for him too.
But good for him. He's went into a situation as a backup a year ago.
He couldn't have signed with a better team in a better situation. I mean, that line is massive. He's got playmaking tight ends. He's got young, talented wide receivers. He's got the biggest bruising back in the NFL.
And it was also a bad team when he took it over midway through last year. So
that's fair.
Give him full credit.
You're like, put some respect on Ryan Tannehill's name, huh, Dave?
Right, Omar, don't try to wipe that one away. That is it's amazing what he's done, and it's also a lesson.
8 years isn't long enough to wait for a guy to blossom.
Well, it's a lesson on the condemnation on the rest of the Dolphin franchise he grew up around. So, and some bad luck with the knee injury when it happened, and how it played out. Okay, Adam Sheehan, the tight end, Omar.
Decent touchdown last week. Think he's respectable. I've always wanted either Durham Schmeidt to improve or an upgrade at that position. Now he's playing for Schmeidt, who's injured. We'll see where it goes. Our next question comes from Andrew, who wants to know, who's your MVP of the Miami Dolphins so far, Dave? I've only got 3 candidates, and tell me if you disagree with my list of 3 candidates. Ryan Fitzpatrick, who, you know how I feel about Fitzpatrick. It's Fitzmagic, baby. When you got Fitzmagic, you can beat any team in the NFL. Now, what you got to avoid is Fitztragic. And then you got Jerome Baker, who's leading the team in tackles. He's delivered 2 sacks. I think he's one of the best blitzers on this team. And Xavier Howard, 3 interceptions in 5 games. Who's your MVP, Dave?
I'll throw in one more at you. Jason Sanders, 17 for 17 on field goals. He's
doing his job, Dave?
Flawless. And the bizarre thing is he had 5 field goals the last 2 weeks. The first week with 5 field goals, everybody's questioning, and rightfully so, what a bad thing to kick 5 field goals. When you win by 43-17, nobody's questioning kicking 5 field goals. So, but I throw, I'm not saying he does. Look, you'd have to vote for Ryan Fitzpatrick, I guess. I'm not sure there's been well, in their 2 wins, he's been great. In their 3 losses, he's been okay and to poor. So he ranks 17th in the league in quarterback. So is that the MVP you're looking for? I mean, okay, I'm not going to argue with you.
If you deliver me the 17th best offense in the NFL, I'm not going to fight you. I've seen worse covering the Dolphins for 14 years. So I'm really not going to fight you. I'd like you to be 16th or above, but 17th? I mean, my standards have been lowered over the last decade, Dave. Let's not pretend like
we got to bring up Omar's bar here a little okay, here's what good franchises do, okay? And look, the Dolphins are rebuilding and all. This isn't a slap at them. I'm just saying 17th isn't good enough.
Fair. Dolphins Deprecio, I hope I said that right. Do you think that Eric Rowe's evolution since he's arrived in Miami, mainly on mainly covering defensive tackles, has been a good thing?
I mean, covering tight ends. Yeah.
Yes.
This is right up your alley because you've been talking about this for a while. But when you look at last Sunday when George Kittle had 4 catches for 44 yards, and that's sort of, as you've talked about, that's been the story since they put Rowe in that position. You can remember back the start of last year and the previous couple of years, how tight ends, it just became They
were tearing up Minka too. They were tearing up Minka.
Pro Bowl entry of tight ends. And so, I mean, that's a nice role they found for Eric Rowe in that regard.
Every tight end came to Miami or played the Dolphins, and they put a Pro Bowl campaign together. It just had been the norm for this franchise. They could not find anybody to cover the tight ends. Jerome Baker did his thing. Rashad Jones did his thing. Minka Fitzpatrick did his thing. But nobody managed to contain him. Eric Rowe is neutralizing tight ends. And not just average tight ends, but elite tight ends. And to me, he's been the top performing Dolphins player outside of Ryan Fitzpatrick. And, Xavier Howard and 3 interceptions. That can't be overlooked.
Okay, UCR 42 has a good question, Omar. Does the solid to good play from Andrew Van Ginkel and Zach Seiler lend more credibility to the argument the Dolphins should rotate more bodies in the front 7?
Rotation is going to be mandatory at this point. Yeah, right. Right now, I will say this. If I have to put something on terms of pleasant surprises, right now, Myles Gaskin's probably the top one because this is a guy I didn't even think belonged on the 53-man roster last year. He's become the starter this year. That's a huge come up. And Andrew Van Ginkel, who's light in the tail, but is managing the improvements that he's shown from year 1 to year 2 have been drastic. I was so concerned when I saw him in warmups against the 49ers and he was working in the starting position. And I thought to myself, oh my God, this is a running team. Andrew Van Ginkel is going to be on the edge. It's going to be a disaster. And while it was a disaster, it wasn't Andrew Van Ginkel's fault. And in fact, he set the edge well. And it blew my mind. I'm a huge Seiler fan. I think that guy has earned a starting spot, whether it be via injury or in my mind, he had outperformed everybody on the defensive line except for Emmanuel Ogbah in the last 3 games. And I want to see him continue to get elevated play. But is snap count important? Absolutely. I don't feel comfortable with defensive linemen playing more than 35 snaps a game. And you have to have a good rotation, which is why I think it's important that Raekwon Davis step up and be able to contribute 25 solid snaps. And Jason Strowbridge, he is a 5th-round pick who has not played all season. They even left him home against Jacksonville. He's got to step up and show you why he was a draft pick. He's got to contribute. Right now, if he can give you 5 to 10 quality snaps as an edge setter, that would benefit Miami.
Yeah, I think you get the idea. Depth matters in the NFL, and the defensive linemen are playing 50 to 60% of the snaps as starters typically, and so if you get above that, you get into problems of them holding up through the whole game, and really down here in the heat that's added to it. So. The fact that they have Van Ginkel and Seiler have shown they can step in and play are to me, big things in getting some depth on the defense. All right, we get the matchup with our old friend Adam Gase. Omar, you take it away from here, talking about the Jets coming in.
Listen, we know the Jets are circling the drain. They're 0-5 on the season. At this point, if I'm the general manager, I'm pulling the plug, trying to get Lawrence Timmons. Trying to get Lawrence. What's the quarterback from Clemson?
Yeah, the Clemson.
Trevor Lawrence.
You got Lawrence of Arabia on my mind here. Yeah, Trevor Lawrence. Yes.
This has got to be a tank special, and if I'm pulling a tank special, I'm keeping Adam Gase as my head coach. We've all seen this team and this franchise, and Gase doesn't like me for saying this, but they quit on him in 2016. The franchise quit on him. They didn't want to win their final 4 games because they did not want Adam Gase to return. In fact, against Buffalo in the season finale, players pulled themselves out of the game after the first quarter. And when we went inside that locker room and asked players, do you want Gase back? The answer was, well, that's up to management. And
I think part of that, Omar, is Gase quit on the team. And talking to players since that time and people in the Dolphins, they feel Gase quit on the team. He wasn't putting in the work. And so when the coach quits, when it's not important to the coach, it's not going to be important to the players. And so, yes, players quit, but the bigger fact to me, they didn't want him back. He quit on them. And they saw that, and they said, okay, this guy just isn't going to stay.
I had never heard that, but it's I think there's some stuff going on in New York, and obviously players wanting out, like Le'Veon Bell. We knew Le'Veon was kind of a malcontent, and it was never a good fit for that organization. But the fact that Le'Veon wanted off that train wreck, and then you've got the safety that went to Seattle. Why is his name not coming to my mind right now? Their Pro Bowl safety.
Yeah.
Jamal Adams. Jamal Adams. Everybody wants off this train. The question is, Gase was hired to help Sam Darnold develop and become the quarterback that he has the potential to come. And that just hasn't happened right now, Dave. How much do you put that on Gase as opposed to Sam Darnold and now his ankle injury?
Well, remember when the Dolphins looked at the quarterbacks that year, Gase did not like Sam Darnold. And so that marriage to me was always a little bizarre from that.
Allegedly did not.
Allegedly did not like Sam Darnold. How much do you put it on that? I really don't know. You can blame Gase for Sam Darnold not becoming a great quarterback. I'm not sure.
He doesn't have much weaponry.
Their offensive line's awful. They don't have any weapons. I mean, here we go again, though, with Gase, with the Ryan Tannehill thing. Oh, he doesn't have enough weapons around him. Okay, so I'm not giving him that out for 6 years in the NFL. I don't think Adam Gase is a very good coach. You can just look at his results and see that. But I'm not sure that I'm going to blame him for Sam Darnold not being one of the great young quarterbacks in the game.
Our next question comes from Jack Dixon, who wants to know, is there any sign Adam Gase has learned from what happened in Miami? Usually that second gig is a little bit better than the first.
Well, usually you have to sit out for a couple years, 3 years, and reinvent yourself. And you get to mull over your mistakes and think about them. The mystery in the whole Adam Gase timeline here, from when he left the Dolphins to within 2 weeks was hired by the Jets, was why? Why would the Jets hire him? I remember writing a column saying, hey, I want to be head coach of the New York Jets too. I mean, if they're going to base it on a losing coach just having a team quit on him and having just flames across the fires across the roster, then they got their man. And it's all playing out again with the Jets. A lot of the things we saw here with the Dolphins. So usually a guy on a second year has time to think about and learn and reinvent and improve. And Gase, all he got was confirmation that he was doing the right things.
I've always said, I don't stand by this anymore, but I've always said that Gase would be a good coach when he matured. When he matured and sort of grew up, he would become a good coach. I don't know if I believe that anymore, because the same issues that he had in Miami are the same issues the exact same issues he's having now with the Jets. A running back who wants out just because of the inconsistency and his utilization of backs. Top players like Jarvis Landry wanting out just because he absolutely crossed them and rubbed them the wrong way. Inconsistent play from quarterback. Bad offensive line. Yes, he's got injuries, and his quarterback had mono. And we can have a laundry list of excuses why Gase's teams aren't delivering. But I wouldn't accept those excuses if they were Brian Flores' team. Why do I have to constantly accept them because it's Adam Gase? And I think, you argue why he got the job so quickly. Adam Gase has made an army of friends in the media industry and in the coaching ranks. And unfortunately for him, all those friends are turning on him right now. And things are sort of turning sour. He's always been so power-driven. And right now, I think he needs an opportunity. He needs to be humbled.
I never understood people making excuses for him because he talked to them. That's the big thing in the media. If the guy talks to you, he's a good guy. And you just look at what Adam Gase did here and some of the problems he had. NFL coaches should not be having those problems. There's enough built-in problems to the job not to bring in your own problems. And that's really what he did with the Dolphins. Okay, Eric has our next question. What do the Dolphins need to build on versus the Jets to know this rebuild is on schedule?
To me, it's got to be a running game. I would like to see better play from the offensive line and better play from the defensive line. If there was one criticism that I've had from what this regime is building, what Brian Flores is doing as a head coach, it's been I have not been pleased with their performance in the trenches. To me, this is still a finesse team. And yes, Brian Flores inherited a finesse team. But let's not act like they haven't gone out of their way. 2 new defensive ends, 2 free agents on the offensive line, a new defensive tackle, 3 rookies drafted early in the draft. You've done a lot to reinforce this defense and this offensive line. You've done a lot to win the trenches and perform a little bit better, and it just hasn't been good enough. I would like to see them show me that you can run for 100 yards without the assistance of Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Yeah, to me, what they have to do this week is pick up right where they left last week, because you are playing a team in a similar way. It's been decimated. It's not good. It's ready to be beaten. Go out and, just like you did to San Francisco, dominate this week too. That will show some emotional growth, if not for the team, because this should be an easy win for you. This really should. Okay, Chris Anderson has our final question. Do you think Nick Needham, Omar's nickname superstar, stays in the slot?
Not my nickname. Brian Flores.
Right. Flores threw it out there. Stays in the slot versus the Jets and receiver Jamison Crowder, or does Xavier Howard or Brian Jones slide inside?
I think we leave Brian Jones and Xavier Howard out there on the boundaries and let them do the things that they do. I think that their ability to cover for an extra second or the threat of a turnover, which is what Xavier Howard presents, makes a quarterback hold on to the ball an extra second longer. And I think that that feeds the defensive line. Now, do they need better play from the nickel spot? Absolutely. Which is why I think we've seen they're going to continue to invest in Nick Needham, and maybe Noah Igbenogany was going to eventually get into the mix. But yes, Jamison Crowder is their biggest threat. I think you put a safety over him, bracket him, and sort of take him away from Jets quarterback and force them to throw on the outside. I like your chances when you force the quarterback to throw on the outside. So let's keep those veteran quarterbacks on the outside and force them to work hard. Now, I could go to the argument of put Byron Jones on him and sort of take him out the game and maybe need him on the boundary or Igbenogany on the boundary and sort of force them to work harder. So it could go either way with me.
You know, but with Jones just in there one game now, effectively this year, I would think they want their defense to everybody get in their roles and play them and get comfortable. And this is a good game. Yeah, that's the one matchup that's an issue. But I'm with you as far as putting Jones and Xavier Howard as their as outside cornerbacks and get everybody in their roles, because this is a good game. This is a good 2 weeks, really 2 games to grow up in. One thing I skipped, Omar, my bad on the script, was the whole COVID problems and what they've caused, the outbreaks in Tennessee and New England, forced games to be changed. How will that altered schedule impact the Dolphins, in your opinion?
Well, the bye's coming earlier than you would thought it would. I think this is a good time for them to have a break and rest their bodies and give them an opportunity to finish strong. I think the Dolphins have been a relatively healthy team, but they can certainly use the break right now. Defensively, I would like to see them tighten the screws on this defense. So I would like to see them continue to play. But it does give this team and these coaches an opportunity to evaluate and assess what they've had and to do a self-scout. And that's a good thing, because not having a preseason, we've sort of used the first phase of the season, the first 4 games, to sort of kind of figure it out. And this would be a great time for them to figure out their run game. And, you know, power zone, outside zone, pulling. They got to figure something out and figure out what works. And right now we're still just throwing things against the wall and seeing what sticks. And if you can walk away from this second phase of the season with a run game identity, with 6 or 8 plays that you can run that could get you 4 yards, I would look at this second phase of the season, win or loss, as a success. So hopefully they can get that done, and hopefully time and opportunity to do a self-scout will benefit them.
Yeah, I don't think it really affects them as the way. I mean, they play the Jets this week at home rather than Denver on the road, which was moved a few weeks back. The bye weeks moved up a little, but look, every team is making adjustments, and teams like the Patriots and the Titans and the Bills of the game last night on Tuesday. Those teams have had to make a lot bigger of adjustments than the handful of teams like the Dolphins are having to make. All right, prediction time, Omar. We both got it wrong last week. We both were surprised by how, not just how easily the Dolphins won, but they won in San Francisco. So who you got, Jets or Dolphins?
I'm dumping on the Dolphins train right now. I'm riding that bandwagon, that choo-choo. I'm a fan of Ryan Fitzpatrick, and I think he's getting hot. I wrote a column this week. Quiet all this Tua noise, and I love Tua, but this is Ryan Fitzpatrick's team. The coaches will tell you that. The players will tell you that. Nobody's looking to bench Fitz. Everybody loves Fitz. It should be a show. Everybody loves Raymond. Everybody loves Fitz, except for Dave Hyde. And let's ride this train and see where it takes us. Right now, I don't see any reason why Ryan Fitzpatrick can't lead this team to a 10-win season like he did with the Jets. I don't see any reason why.
True story, Omar. I was in a Super Bowl hotel back in early 90s. I get a phone call. It's person identifies themselves as a TV producer. They're putting together a show and a sports writer. Could I answer some questions? Talk to them for a half hour. A few years later, I'm on my couch, and my wife says, "Oh my God, those people, they sound like your parents." And it was Everybody Loves Raymond. That was the show they called me. I helped them put together that show. I've never got residuals for that.
Wait a minute here. Wait a minute. Everybody Loves Raymond's based on your life?
I know. They never show anybody slaving over a keyboard, though, in that show. It's all comedy. I love Fitzpatrick. Everybody loves Fitzpatrick. The question is the future. Where's the future in this?
Stop worrying about the future, Dave. Future's now.
Okay, worry about being 3-3 this week. That's what it's about, because this will be an easy win. And it'll be a blowout, 35-10. I don't think I've ever picked a bigger spread for an NFL game than that. But between the Adam Gase Titanic going down in another city, and we saw it, and here play out, and the Dolphins coming off a cruising win, that a feel-good win. That
Adam Gase Titanic. That should be a column, Dave. Adam Gase Titanic. Yeah, I know what it's like to cover a team that's quit on Gase. So I think this Jets team, they're done. Frank Gore's going to be running hard because Frank Gore's always going to be running hard, and I don't know if there's anything else that the Jets have to offer. So 27-17 Dolphins. Well, thank you for watching X's and Omar's. You can find us on the podcast. Just search X's and Omar on your Apple Play podcasts and wherever you find your podcast. And the show will be on YouTube and also provided here on the Sentinel pages. We will see you next week for bye edition of X's and Omar's. The schedules confuse me.
We don't get a bye week, Omar?
No. We're working.
We're back. Okay, we play through our bye weeks.
Definitely. It's Wednesday. You get the rest of the weekend off. Well, thank you for watching us, and see you next week, Wednesday at noon. I'm going to send you a link, Dave, for a light.
For what?
For a light, for like one of these fancy things.
I moved my thing. Why is the light wrong?
You're a little bit dark. Your face comes off a little bit dark. I'm not sure what it is.
Okay, I could have got another light. I thought it looked okay here though.